Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this first webinar in a series of British Council Wider Europe webinars, looking at the issues that have been presented to universities as a result of the pandemic, which is something we all share all around the world. There's a whole series of webinars. Today, we're looking at the readiness, the preparedness, the activity or the lack of activeness with which universities have engaged with what the pandemic has brought about and the need to take teaching online, learning online, management online. There'll be other ones over the rest of this month and June. We'll make sure that you get the details on what those topics will be. My name's Roy Cross. I work for the British Council English for Education Systems team in London. We have 4 distinguished panelists. I'll introduce those in just a couple of minutes. What I'd like to do first, please, is to ask you to complete the poll that my colleague Nicola is about to put up on the screen. This will give the panelists some sense of your interests and your occupation. What kind of an audience are you? So if you could please, you can only choose one, I'm afraid. That might be difficult for some of you. Student, teacher, researcher, management, none of the above. We were going to have one that said all of the above, but we haven't got that one. Yeah. And Nicola, you should tell me when you think people have all managed to vote. So, yeah, the majority are teachers. Not very many people, primarily at least researchers, quite a lot of management, and 3 students who've come to learn more about what it might be like later in their career, possibly. Yeah? Thank you for that. Can you close that then, Nicola? Yeah. What we'll do, we're going to hear from each of our panelists for 4 or 5 minutes, their thoughts on how their universities have responded to the demands of the pandemic. We'll follow that with probably quite a short discussion amongst the panel, because what we'd like to do is to invite you to put your questions to the panel as well. We've collected some in advance, and we will start our discussion by responding to the questions that were sent in advance. I'd like to ask you, please, to use the chat for your questions. Please address them to everybody. Don't just address them to the panelists, because I suspect, will be less able to sort of see the chat as it whizzes past. We have 2 colleagues who are looking at the chat and picking out the questions for us to try to answer. Okay, if I may, I'd now like to invite Razia to tell us about the response from her university in Azerbaijan. You're Director of Development. I guess that's been a particularly busy position this last few weeks, Razia.
Thank you very much, Roy. Thank you for everyone, and hello from Azerbaijan, Baku. My speech will be a little bit philosophical rather than the approach of the university, but I will touch upon those issues as well. So what kind of world we are creating? Is it going to be virtual? Virtual education, virtual meetings, conferences, virtual mobilities. What else is going to be virtual? What will be the solution? What else IT and web technologies are going to bring to our lives? Or is it only because of COVID-19 we started realizing multiple ways of how technology can change and improve our lives? To what extent it will change our lives? As educators, these and many other questions are making us to think, what is there for education? What will be the format and shape of it? although the technology has been influencing the way universities teach and manage the process for the last decades, the crisis that came with COVID-19 is reshaping it faster. Those universities who were reluctant to teach online moved to online teaching in a very brief time, some with thorough readiness and some with no readiness at all. If we look at the positive side, with the impact of web technologies, the world is now becoming even smaller through the means of technology. You can easily, quickly organize big international conferences like this one without overpaying for air tickets. The papers are accepted faster. You can see anyone from distinct parts of the world without spending days on your way to a destination. You can have an entire world in your own mobile device. You can visit museums virtually. You can get mobile education. You can get your job done virtually. Are we going to want to come back to our earlier lives? So currently, all educational institutions are facing similar problems, even though they might have found different solutions. Students, as major actors of the education process, are facing most challenging time, since they are the ones affected by the mode, shape, and format of the teaching process. To what extent our teachers were ready to move on online learning? To what extent they are technologically savvy? How their technological savviness coincide with that of a modern student? What makes students bored during online classes? Students also affected directly, they can also bring a challenge to the teaching process. Students can have low level of engagement, can get engaged in social loafing. Students' attitude to online learning will define their engagement in the learning process right now. To what extent we can change the attitudes towards online learning? It depends on many factors. Largely, this will depend on instructors' competencies to be able to build the balance by providing opportunity for students to learn in informal ways as well. With good instructions, we can turn students into self-determined learners, making them digitally competent. So the proper design of learning technology or learning techno-pedagogical design can help to solve some of the issues. Universities have chosen different ways. For example, in our case at Khazar University, we have chosen a synchronized model of e-learning. We have chosen MS Teams, where we can have live streams to the students, and 95% of our classes are taught with MS Teams, and we have reached 73% of attendance rate. So we don't have a dropout yet calculated, but I think next week we'll have, but it's very, very low. University governance is also facing problems, challenges. Leadership of universities are also looking for ways how to improve the quality, how to assure the quality, how to control, how to provide the equivalent of a quality they had in face-to-face classes, how to assess and how to measure. These big decisions are not made yet. People are thinking of making that decisions next week, and majority of universities are waiting for the decision made by the ministry, what they decide and what will be the guidance. And also the big question for the universities at the moment are how to assure the admission and how to retain the students. But I think the most positive takeaways for the universities of the situation at the moment is like they can go green. They can reduce paper use. As they have developed the system of control, they can use it after COVID-19 era and turn into the e-management, saving resources, and create a broken family balance. Also, the latter one is a big discussion now.
30 seconds left, Razia. About yes. 30 seconds, yeah.
Yes, other questions are remaining unanswered and need further investigation, but one thing remains clear. Whatever mode, format, shape, or means of education we choose, we remember that we have to nurture students with personal qualities like empathy, caring, and social responsibilities, along with their professional qualities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's a perspective from Azerbaijan. We're now going to go to the north of England, a place where I did part of my university education, applied linguistics, to Lancaster, to hear from Simon Guy. I'm not quite sure whether everybody knows exactly what a pro-vice chancellor is, but it translates as a deputy or assistant rector, I think, for many people in the region. Simon, please, your thoughts from Lancaster.
Thank you, Roy, and good to be working with an alumnus of Lancaster. So hello, everybody. Greetings from the northwest of England. So Lancaster is about an hour north of Manchester. I'm sure many of you know Manchester, but Lancaster is a smaller city in the north of England. And Lancaster is a kind of campus university, but one with a very interesting global network as well, which I want to just say something briefly about. Yes, my role as a PVC Pro Vice Chancellor for Global, which means I am in the senior management team. And my comments are probably going to reflect that. I think hopefully I'm talking to at least a third of the audience who have self-defined as managers. And I want to tell you a little bit about how Lancaster's been responding to COVID. And then give you some more personal reflections, which maybe slightly provocatively are going to be that technology, this isn't all about technology, even though that's the theme of this workshop. So perhaps a gentle provocation for us to think about in the questions. So Lancaster Campus University, it's highly ranked. We're consistently in the top 10 of all the UK league tables, and we're currently international, the Sunday Times University, International University of the Year. And that's partly because we have 4 international campuses in West Africa, in Malaysia, a new one we're opening in Leipzig in Germany, and one in China. And I mention that because that's an important part of Lancaster's story, because of course we had to face the COVID challenge rather earlier than many of our other universities in the sector, because we had to deal with this as the campus closed in China. And so we moved very quickly to create a task and finish group to put everything online very, very quickly and mostly successfully in terms of meaning keeping all the courses going and with, I think, positive student satisfaction as well. So when COVID hit the UK and we had to close the campus here, we had a little bit of experience, and we moved very much into an emergency response mode and try to affect what we called a kind of lift and shift of all our courses online. And very importantly, because this is key as well, I'm sure for you, is actually move most people off our campuses to what we described as a remote and reduced operating model. And I say most because the university is not closed. We still have about 1,600 students living on campus who we have to look after. So the university is not entirely closed. So that kind of signified the first part of our kind of response and emergency response. And we're now really moving into a new, the next phase, which is thinking about what we're going to do next academic year, and also how we might start to contemplate opening the campus again, but with this social distancing principle of at least everyone keeping at least 2 meters apart, which is very challenging from a campus point of view. Our estimate is that if we operate a campus on that basis, we're down to about 20% capacity and our costs increase. So this is a very challenging issue, which I'm sure many of you are dealing with, and that's a very live thing we're working with now. So really, in terms of where we are, we've come through that first shock and that first emergency response. We're now starting to think about the future, and in particular, in terms of online learning, what it means to maintain our position as a top 10 UK university in terms of online learning. And that really means moving from just a kind of sticking plaster approach of getting everything online and starting to think really about what quality online or blended provision might look like. The very interesting article I read recently in the Times Higher Education supplement I'd recommend by David Lefebvre, who's the director of a kind of online company called Incendi. And he talks about a 3-phase approach: stabilizing your offer, enhancing it, and then looking to innovate. And I suppose so in terms of the personal reflections I want to offer and encourage conversation about today, it's that we don't remain in this emergency kind of stabilization, but despite all the challenge we have and the immediacy of what we need to achieve to survive, we start to look how we enhance what we do and also how we start to innovate. So coming back to the kind of reflection around, it's not really all about the technology. There's a danger, I think, in just thinking technology can kind of save us. And actually, what we need to do is find the most sophisticated online platform and all just increase our digital skills, and somehow that will solve the immediate problem. And then we will be able to return to how we used to do things. All the analysis that we've been doing and the scientific analysis that we've been listening to suggests that a simple return to the previous golden age is quite unlikely. This is a challenge which is going to persist. It may come back in waves, and it's quite likely to change us forever in a way. Not least, not even if the health effects go away, we'll have the economic shocks to deal with. So the idea of returning to an old normal, we think at Lancaster is very unlikely. Really what we need to start doing is preparing for a new normal, the contours and content of which are still uncertain, which makes, of course, planning very, very difficult. So if we're going to prepare for this new normal, technology is important. Learning how to use it, having the best possible technology that you're able to access is important, but it's certainly not the whole story. So my reflections that I want to offer for today's meeting for discussion really is that rather than simply focusing on technology, it's important that we continue to focus on our core university strategies and avoid a kind of race to the bottom where we all simply survive and all become the same as each other, and the quality of education drops down to a lowest common denominator. So we need to look beyond surviving to thriving, as the Dean of our management school describes it, and look for opportunities in the new normal. It's already been suggested in the previous presentation about some of the sustainability advantages that may come out of us learning to operate in a more efficient way, a more digital way, and by traveling around less. So there may be some real learning here also in terms of a low carbon future.
Simon, a few seconds more. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm on to my final point. Thanks for that, Rosa. And the final one, which again, I think is incredibly important, and I think strongly makes the point that this is not about technology, is that the most important asset we have, again, are our staff and our students. So whatever journey we take our university through, it's absolutely a key priority that we take our staff and our students with us. And here I'll mention one last issue that I think is not talked about enough, which is the whole issue of kind of mental health. We're all spending all our time online now. We're all anxious about the future. And it's very easy to forget that as an issue as well. So perhaps one other issue I'd like to put on the table. So thank you for listening. I hope there was something of relevance for all of you, despite whatever position or context you're working in. I look forward to the discussion. Thanks, Rory.
Thank you very much, Simon. We're now going to head over to the Ukraine to listen to Roman with his perspective on the current situation. Thank you, Roman. And you're going to share some slides, I think, aren't you? Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to share the slides. At first, a few seconds. Can you see the presentation? Sorry.
We can. That's good. Yeah.
Yep. So something that I wanted to talk about today is quarantine in higher education, and I called my presentation Challenge Accepted. Because that's about our university and how our university copes with the quarantine reality and how we are coping with it at the moment, and how technologies are helping to help cope with this reality. So firstly, I'd like to start my presentation from the short timeline, showing how our university, how it all started in Ukraine, and how our university started coping with the quarantine reality, shutdown reality. So, firstly, our quarantine in Ukraine was declared on the 12th of March, and it was the last offline. We had last offline classes in Oster Academy, and we took some, like our management took some managerial decisions about the remote learning. And it was decided that in our university we are going to use Google as much as we can, because we have some kind of agreement with Google starting from a decade ago or 2 decades ago. So we worked a lot with Google, and our staff knows Google well, and we use Google a lot in our community, in our university community. So we decided that we are going to work with Google Meet, and we took a Google Meet as a primary technology for our classes. And was absolutely, like the next day, I wanted to say that absolutely on the very next day after the quarantine was, like we found out that there's going to be a quarantine. We had a first tech specialist meeting with the tech specialist who told us how to use a Google Meet, who told teachers how to use it, and how to work with students with the help of Google Meet. And absolutely, like we had no break. We started from the very Monday after that Friday. We started working with Google Meet, and we had first classes in Google Meet with our students. So like I think I had the first class I had right on that Monday, I had a first class with my students, and nothing changed for us. All the students, although the students were at homes, they started working with this Google Meet technology, and I think that it worked well for us. So, but still, the managerial it was a bit later. Like management started their first meetings. The first directorate was 2 weeks later. I think that's because we still waited. We thought that the quarantine will not last for so long, and we still waited until maybe we'll come back to the offline. But when we found out that the quarantine is going to be prolonged, it was decided to make to put like everything in online. And the first directorate was 2 weeks later, and also in 2 weeks later we started first extracurricular activities in our universities. And like at the first lecture, the funny to say was how to survive the quarantine. It was also with the help of Google Meet, but these extracurricular activities were external, so it's a bit different in Google Meet. Maybe I'll tell about that later. On the 13th of April, we had the first Teacher Excellence Online meeting. And we talked about the remote learning, and we talked about the first experiences of teachers' first experiences on remote learning. And we found out some problems, we discussed it, and we spoke about, we told each other like what we can do, what shouldn't be done, and we shared some experiences. So, and in almost 2 months already, like I think I'm presenting this presentation for everyone, and I'm talking about our experiences with you, and I'm very happy to have such an opportunity to present our experience with it. So something we found out like we used technologies while talking about the technologies. We use technologies for interactive communications with students. So we can say it's synchronous learning. In our university at first, we used only Google Meet, and it was advised for every teacher in the university to use Google Meet because we have corporate accounts connected to the Google. And that's why it was chosen as a primary technology. But later on in a week or so, while we were sharing the experiences, some teachers, for example, from foreign languages department, they decided that they can use Zoom, and it was not a problem for everyone. Like it was decided that Zoom can be used also.
But about another minute, Roman. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Another minute. Yeah.
Okay. Task management, we use Google. Yesterday, like some people told me that we sold our results to Google. It sounds funny, but like lots of our classes are tied to Google, in Google technologies. Maybe partially because it's free, and the second thing is we like can do anything. We try to do anything with Google. So we also use some technology, like we also use Moodle, and we also had some Lead Pro, like our internal technology, which is called Lead Pro, and it's a library. It's an online library for our students. Still, we found out that no matter whether we are using technologies, whether we are online or offline, we should keep to the principles. The quality is about all. Academic freedom in terms of methods and forms of teaching. So we decided the same situation with Zoom. We decided to allow people management decided to allow people to use technologies they find necessary. The same thing is about methodological control, about online teaching practices, the problem of academic integrity, and the one thing we talked about a lot is care about each other in community. So we try to make our computing more integrated, even though that we are online.
Really quickly on this one, yeah.
some problems that we encountered is with like it's fun. It may sound funny, but we have lots of problems with internet connection, and then in some students who are from villages, for example, they really can have some problems. But the problem is that we can't find out whether they have real and thought out problems. So that's one of the problems. Like at the moment, we believe our students, but still we cannot say that like we cannot. That's a problem. Technology fatigue, like that's a huge problem for the moment. We found out for our university teachers, because they say that the teaching online is much harder than teaching offline. Lots of huge problems with lab classes. I've seen the questions from teachers of chemistry who asked about the teaching lab without labs. Yes, that's a problem, and it was a problem for me too, because I'm teacher of journalism, and we had like students don't have necessary technologies at homes, so you cannot just show something for them. That's something we cannot change. That's something that we cannot work with. Security breaches, we had some security breaches, especially during external activities in Google Meet. And the huge problem everyone talks about at the moment is remote assessment. That's something we want to work out. Further remote teaching methodologies development, like there's a perspective. We need to practice online technologies as alternative for offline technologies. And first improvement of teachers' tech skills. We had a problem. Yes, that was a problem. While we had lots of elderly teachers who still needed to get to know more technical skills, needed to get technical skills, who needed to adapt, or the other one variant was to leave. But we still, like, they adapted, and our elder teachers adapted, and it may sound like ageism, but still that's something that it's still a problem in Ukraine. Offline is a new luxury. I would like to finish it with it, because our students still prize offline learning more and more, and they say that they want to come back to the campus, they want to talk to teachers, they want to work offline, not online. And that's something I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Roman. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So we're now come back from the Ukraine to, the clue is in the name, the South Bank of the Thames in London. And Ivana, you're going to tell us what it looks like from down there below the river. Yeah. And you have some slides too, I think, don't you?
Yes, I'm sharing my slides. Hi, everyone. Yes, so I hope you can see the screen. Yeah, should be the slide. Okay, so I'm a senior lecturer at London South Bank University, and have been there for many years. And one of my big areas of interest is innovation and use of technology in teaching, which is now really popular, becoming more popular than ever. So what we are trying to do is we had to switch to online learning very quickly, and my suggestion to staff was really to, as a practical solution, to start with the Panopto. I don't know if you're familiar. Panopto is just a screen capture. It records whatever is on the screen, and it's very easy to record and to edit videos. So you can edit, you can do the PowerPoint or just OneNote, which I use for my engineering calculations for students. And it's very easy to embed in Moodle, which we use. So it can be also downloaded at home and used. It's free. And what is interesting is you can see all the statistics for your videos, and you can see the peaks, which are before the assignments, a few days before assignments. And interestingly, there was not a big difference between offline and online. When we switched to lockdown, there was not a big difference in the viewing figures, but views increased towards the assessment. Students can also use Panopto to record their presentations and upload videos, even videos of any size. So that's a very good thing in Panopto. And there is a mobile app. There are some difficult things. It's not very easy to switch between PowerPoint and other programs. At least I haven't figured it out. Automatic captions are not great, maybe because of my accent. And students, well, some students view, but the average viewing time is 7 minutes in my videos, which is not very long. So I guess that's one thing. Maybe we should make shorter videos. And it's not much interaction, it's just delivery. So many of my colleagues are using Panopto. And the next, because this is not really interactive, some interactive tools that we use are Moodle quizzes, and they're very good. I used quite a lot, and both for formative and summative assessment. And the Socrative tool, free, I recommend it. I think it's good. Slido, I just started using it. I think it's good to check how students understand what is being told in a class, and they can do it on their phone, do the quiz on their phone while attending the class. So I use it for formative and summative, and it's more active learning because they're actually doing something, and there is interaction. And in some quizzes, they even, solve the questions together, although they shouldn't, but still, I guess they work together on finding the correct answer. And I use it also sometimes for polling, just like in this webinar, in this Zoom meeting. The good thing about these quizzes is they are self-marked and with automatic feedback, which is making life easier for us. But you should be confident if you use it for exam or similar, because once I had a problem that students, once the quiz expired, lost all the answers and the ICT could not retrieve it. It was my one setting that I didn't click, and that caused it. Also, you can't use questions that you would really like. It's limited type of questions you can use. And students can cheat. They can work together. But I think the assessment, my take on assessment, it will be more lifelike, because in real life we have access to all the literature and we can ask our friends. Although in real life, probably not everyone would be working on the same question at the same time. But that's another.
About 1 minute, Ivana. Yeah?
Okay, and the last one is what many of us are using as well, Microsoft Teams. Again, easy to set a meeting. Students can ask questions, so it's more interactive than just giving them videos. And the session is timetabled, so it gives a bit more pressure. So you can have large groups. And I use it, I find it great for project meetings, where students can record what you tell them, advice you give them, and then complain later if you haven't said what something, you haven't said something right. And also I deal with some student complaints where that is also useful to teams to have one-to-one chats. We use it for staff meetings now regularly, and it can be used for webinars, distance study, and students are happy with it. There is, in my view, limited interaction and not really that much difference from videos. There should be more interaction, in my view. And it's a general tool. It's not designed for teaching. One colleague had a problem when some students started disconnecting others and muting others. So there was a bit of discipline issue as well. So this is really kind of short overview. And what I'm interested in, and I think the traditional lecturing is not coming back, but maybe you have another view. Equal opportunity. Many students don't have internet access, don't have a computer which can handle software they need to use, cannot come to university to attend labs. even the labs will be difficult because apparently they need to do deep cleaning after every student group does the laboratory. So this kind of looking at individual students and their needs will be a big issue in my view. I'm really keen to have some good practice sharing source. And I sometimes use Twitter, but I don't know what other views are. And I'd really like some opportunities for us to look for some opportunities, what we can do to change teaching for the better in this situation. So to see the good side of it. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ivana. Yeah, we'll come back together now and have a discussion amongst the panel. The one that's ringing in my ears at present is it's easy for them to cheat, but it's easy for them to cooperate. And I was wondering how we distinguish between cooperation and cheating. Razia, is cooperation and cheating an issue for you in Baku?
I think, yes, we are largely discussing these issues if we are, for example, are there to conduct online assessment, how we are going to control that students are not cheating on the exams. And it's not decided yet. But I think since we are assigning everything as a homework, as, my kids are studying at home. So sometimes they come to me and ask questions and I help them. It's not that I'm doing tests for them, but I consult them. I mean, in this case, how you recognize it. Is it going to be a cheating or is it going to be a cooperation? The same thing goes to the students. I think universities should also think of building in socialization part of the LMS, of learning management system, where students can discuss this and that issue among themselves. So we have observed and noticed that students like a lot, especially during this isolation time. For example, I will tell you one small story from my own classes. Once I had an internet problem with during my class, and I went off to another room to ask my kids to be off the internet so they have more. And I returned back and I saw my students discussing, something unrelated totally to the class material. So they are also looking for the platforms during the classes for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, even with the instructors, to discuss and cooperate on. They need some help. They are, especially as I mentioned, during these times.
Yeah, thank you. Simon, is cooperation or cheating an issue for you in Lancaster?
Well, in one way, cooperation is something we want to encourage, isn't it? So one of the challenges of digital education, it could be argued, and I've seen some of these comments in the chat as well, is that students actually want to learn together. And there are obviously great advantages in that, and that's a great preparation for the world of work employment as well. So I think it's looking for opportunities, and Microsoft Teams is a good example of that, where you can get collaboration between students. So I think putting a positive framework around it, looking for the opportunities of learning and collaboration is what we all need to be doing. In terms of cheating, of course, it's always a problem in any kind of examination approach you choose. And it may be, and it's certainly what we're doing at Lancaster, having to flex around the kind of examinations that you might ask people to do. I mean, we probably don't want to get deep into the detail now, but our assessment policy for this year has shifted rather. And so we're trying to look at least for this year, to try and assess people on the basis of a lot of work that's already completed, rather than just carry on the traditional exams. But there are options and traditions, of course, of what I think are called open book exams, where people can access knowledge, books and notes and whatever and what the exam is really testing is your interpretive skills rather than your memory or how much knowledge you've taken into your mind. So I think there are different kinds of approaches and that we can take here, and we have to flex around this particular challenge.
Thank you. Roman, I'm going to pick you up on your own self-accusation of ageism. And your senior colleagues, your older colleagues, yes. What has the university been able to do to to help them come to terms with the new teaching situation?
As I said, we started from the tech classes for everyone. It didn't matter who, like everyone came. Like they came to computer classes, and in computer classes, it was actually the first day right after the quarantine was announced. And the older teachers, the same as elderly teachers, they came all together. They spoke about the technology. They spoke about the Google Meet, and we looked like how tech assistant, how they showed like how it worked. Later on, starting from the Monday, lots of people came just to the university because they didn't have a good internet connection, for example, or they needed some tech assistance. And first few weeks, 2 weeks or so, tech assistance helped a lot to this for everyone. It didn't matter, the age didn't matter at that time. It actually doesn't matter at the moment, but they help people to. Why I mentioned the age, because lots of more elderly people need assistance, and that's something that we noticed at the very beginning of the quarantine. More often this group of people came to the university and asked to help, but university was open, university was ready to help, assistants were in their places, and like we never stopped the learning process.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ivana, how does South Bank cope with, if you like, a mixed ability group of teachers and lecturers in terms of online teaching?
Yes, so we have these training sessions, but usually staff are quite busy, and they don't necessarily want to be trained on many new things, new software. But I think what I noticed is if there is a task and the tool makes the task easier. For example, when we had to do accreditation documents, and all colleagues kind of jointly worked on OneDrive, and then when the advantages are obvious, then I think people just adopt it, and with the use they learn it. And what I think nowadays we should really ask our students, because I'm not an expert really in technology, so I ask my students, what should I do now? Where should I click? What can you see? What and that works really well. So I think people should just try it and do it badly, and then learn through that.
Razia, in terms of, you talked about reluctance and readiness. We had a little bit of research from a university in Kazakhstan, which asked students, what's your experience of learning under the new situation online for these last 6 weeks? And not all of the students said that it was a less satisfactory experience. In fact, quite a lot of students said, I don't mind at all. It's better than it used to be before the pandemic. Do you have a sense of how your students are reviewing to put it bluntly, the quality of their learning experience under the new conditions?
As I've mentioned earlier, 73% of our students are attending. And those are attending are quite happy with the quality of the teaching. We are getting ready to conduct a survey for our research, and at the same time, it's going to be to measure their satisfaction level and their perception of how they are perceiving this online learning. A lot will depend, as I mentioned again earlier, on the readiness of your teaching staff to carry on. In case of Khazar, we had a blended learning experience. We have a Moodle platform where our teachers were teaching using that platform for their blended learning. So majority of teachers were actually ready for this process. And as we started from mid-March teaching online, there was a tutorial to get ready for our staff to how to carry on with the MS Teams. So I think students, and especially those close to the digital natives, or those highly dependent on the digital technologies, they are quite happy with what's going on right now.
Simon, up in Lancaster, I mean, do you have any sense of the quality of teaching, the satisfaction of students with the new way of doing things?
Well, again, as I said in my brief comments, we had a little bit of a head start because we faced the challenge earlier because of our China campus, and it was very challenging, but it went far better than we thought it might do. And we've actually seen through that process high levels of engagement in students. So I think that confirms some of the other comments. There have, of course, been some negatives around the particular approach that we've taken, and I think this is about a learning curve, really. I don't think anyone would just say we'd all just like to live in this digital universe forever and never have to go and meet each other again. I mean, that would be crazy. But equally, I think there's a real danger in thinking at the moment that there's a kind of a polarity created between some kind of romanticized idea of traditional face-to-face teaching that many of us think we might would like to just return to, and purely online digital. I mean, the reality is that teaching has got more blended and is likely to get more blended again as we go forward. And I think what COVID is showing is in order to be resilient, we need to at least have the capability of going online at moments of stress, and that need around COVID might continue for quite some time as well. So as I said, really there's a difference between kind of surviving, which is maybe the mode many of us are in at the moment, and really trying to thrive. And that's the journey that we're all on, and that's why events like today are really important. The technology has got to be right, but that's only part of the story. And there's a real danger at the moment with lots of people trying to sell us ever more sophisticated technology platforms with bells and whistles, and we all want a solution and we think that'll solve things. But actually at the end, sound pedagogy suggests that what really engages students is high quality teaching, high quality material. The technology is how you present that material and the opportunities you give for collaboration and reflection and interaction. So there may be a journey to go in technology, but that really is only part of the story.
Razia said that they've made the choice at her university to go for synchronous as opposed to asynchronous. And I've heard some people say that actually asynchronous has got quite a lot going for it, because you can allow people to do the reading and the stuff offline in their own time, and that you use your lesson time in a slightly different way. Did you make a similar sort of decision in Lancaster, or did you allow people to do what they want?
So this is, I mean, I'm not familiar with that way, but so this is the kind of flipped classroom kind of idea, Roy, is it?
Razia, why don't you sort of tell us what you... Synchronous is basically at the time, isn't it? Asynchronous is...
live streaming, you can engage students, and it's, you know, you can provide feedback on the presentation, and it's instant feedback. So it's like through Teams you use, and live streaming, students listening and reacting to what you are saying. Asynchronized, when you just send assignments by email, for example, and then prepare and then send it back. Or for example, some teachers at our university, they use WhatsApp to assign students and receive their assignments back. So we allow them to do, because we understand the situation, and they're only a couple of senior teachers.
But you prefer the live experience then? Yes.
In my case, my personal view is that live experience a lot. Of course, you can see the student reaction, and you can change. You can give them some relaxing time, lots of discussions, and asking how you are doing, how you are coping with this COVID issue, and what you are doing to protect. I mean, this kind of socializing things are also taking place through the live streaming, and it's engaged students, because they see you caring, they see you engaged with their learning. That's really
just to come back to you briefly, Simon, on that.
Yeah, thanks. So that's very helpful. Thanks for that explanation. And of course, if you were given that as an either-or choice, who would not choose live and dynamic and interactive? But again, it perhaps reinforces my point again. It's perhaps not an either or here, because it's about what you're trying to achieve pedagogically. And sometimes pedagogically, what you absolutely need is live interaction. Other times, maybe what you need to do is impart kind of knowledge in that rather traditional way. And that connects to what I was describing as the flipped, in which you can have the kind of core lecturing knowledge content delivered in an asynchronous way, when people can consume it when they can. There's all kinds of advantages there for people with different kinds of lives, very flexible. And then you can have the synchronous kind of content, which is the interpretive work, the traditional seminar, etc. And if you link that to the challenge of operating our campus under social distancing, you can maybe, and this is very early stages synchronous, but obviate the need to have those very large lectures, because that kind of information is online to be consumed whenever it suits people. You then have smaller kind of engagements where you do that in kind of interpretive work, and that starts to change how you think about the campus.
Thank you. Roman, what's the sort of, at your university, is it mainly, if you like, the streaming of a conventional lecture, or how interactive does the teaching become?
I think that's very largely depends on the subject. It depends on the discipline. And for example, when I'm teaching the communication courses, it's hard for me to teach just like to put something in the Moodle and wait that when somebody does something with these tasks in the Moodle. And something I do, like I really prefer to communicate with students online, and interactive learning is very important. I think it's absolutely important. But still, like I use at the same time, I use Google Classes as an instrument, Google Classroom, I think it's called, as an instrument to give tasks and to look whether the students coped with the task or not. And like the same as I said, like we use Google infrastructure very intensively. Yes, and I think that should be a balance. There should be a balance between the interactive learning and learning like tasks given, and tasks like assessing the tasks given like in advance.
Thank you. Let me now turn to some of the questions that we've there's been a lot of questions about assessment and evaluation, and there is going to be a webinar dealing with that specifically. And what, Summer, I think perhaps you can comment here, you're hoping to bring that webinar forward so that people get the benefit while examinations and assessment is still happening. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct, Roy. I know this is a hot topic, and we will bring it forward so that colleagues can get some ideas before the term ends, because, you know, I think lots of universities are starting to prepare for the term assessment.
Thank you. We're also going to have, I think, a webinar in the series on motivation, student motivation. There's going to be one on professional development training for staff. I don't think there's one that I spotted particularly on pedagogy, Summer, is there? In the way that a different approach to learning and teaching is made possible by the pandemic. Is that right, Summer? I don't think there's going to be one on pedagogy as such.
Hi, right, yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, we will have a dedicated session looking at the quality, because I think from the conversation we've had so far, there is a lot of question about how do you ensure the quality of the online teaching or a blended teaching offer. So there will be a dedicated session looking at that. And as part of that, of course, pedagogy will be discussed as well.
Yep. One for you, Ivana, perhaps, because you seem to be at least as familiar with the technology as the rest of us. I mean, how does South Bank attempt to assess, is it student satisfaction, or is there some sort of review and recording of the teaching that people offer?
We just, at the moment, we just have the standard evaluation questionnaires. So I'm not familiar if we have any new ways of assessing satisfaction. Right. And I don't think there has been checking of what people have been putting on Moodle and so on. But we have a minimum policy of best practice in the online teaching document. So everyone kind of needs to satisfy some minimum requirements. And so far, there were no complaints about the online teaching. I think students appreciate what staff are doing. But I don't think staff should be complacent, because this is definitely not enough. I think this is very low still in the quality that we could give to students. And that we can certainly improve the way how we assess, and that will be an interesting meeting to attend, to listen to. I look forward to your assessment meeting.
Simon, do you have any sense up there at Lancaster about how are you going to sort of judge the quality of the teaching and the learning?
Well, I mean, one of the ways, obviously, is the traditional ways in terms of student feedback, which particularly in the UK is a very strong feature now of the kind of regulatory and market environment that we live in. And we're already seeing with things like the QS kind of rankings, them introducing new questions around the quality of online learning at the institution. I think we're likely to see a lot more of that. So in terms of internal quality, there will be, I don't see necessarily any challenge to the traditional ways that we do that. And I think this relates back again to us not seeing online as some kind of completely separate domain that's either specialist and in the margins or a temporary emergency response. It needs to be an educational tool, part of our wider pedagogy, the one I think that will play a much more mainstream and central role, not only in the next months and years, but beyond that. I think my personal view is that this will change the nature of certainly higher education and maybe beyond higher education going forward, and will have a fundamental transformative effect on universities. So I don't think there's any simple return to what we were doing before. That's my personal view.
We have a few minutes left, and actually that's a very good cue to, I'll go to you, Razia. I mean, a lot of questions that came in advance were basically wondering, have we got a crystal ball? And how much of what is the online present will be part of a much more online future? There's a webinar on next week, but let's anticipate a bit. Razia, what do you think is not going to change back?
I think, as Simon mentioned, and many other colleagues have mentioned, that lots of things are going to change. At least the systems we have created at the moment, for example, learning management systems we are using, are going to be used to a large extent, I think, by colleagues, by professors, by university. And I think the attitude is going to be different. This is, again, my personal view, that attitude towards life, towards each other, toward the time we spent on Earth. And I think the value system might have also changed for each of us. I mean, this time of crisis gave us a good opportunity to think about everything we have done so far and what's awaiting for us. And definitely, that's my own also decision, opinion, that universities have to look at their strategies, how they are going to change, and what part of those changes they are going to keep. And in case of, for example, another COVID appears, I don't know what will be the future, how they are going to react to the similar situation or the worse situation or to any other situation, because the world was not ready for this kind of changes. So I think there should be plan B, C, Ds, or any other. So I think universities should look at their strategic plans, and we are going to be a lot different. So we are using digital technology and virtual things a lot nowadays. So we will think twice whether we want to go back to our previous lives.
Thank you. Roman, do you want to go back to your previous life? You said, I think, that a lot of your colleagues wanted to, yes?
Something I found out, like, is this experience of COVID-19 and study under the quarantine, it helped us to improve our tech skills. And that's not something that we will forget. Yes, that's something that we will develop, and that's something that's going to develop. And I think it should have started, like, sooner or later, it should have started anyways. This transfer to the internet, this transfer to the online learning. And I still think, like, in the last slide, I showed, I said that offline is a new luxury. And I really believe in it. I think that in future, offline learning, offline teaching, offline speaking, communicating is going to be a luxury. And I think that we should like value that. We should think about it like something better, like something unique, something special. Yes. And maybe sooner or later we're going to transfer to the online learning in 90% of cases, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. Ivana, thoughts from you too?
Yeah, I think the learning should put students in the center and be more tailored to the student, be more engaged with the industry, with entrepreneurial skills, and just become more modern, more kind of less traditional, less like what happened when we started. Well, me in my age, but more kind of suited to this age.
Thank you. And Simon, I mean, your role as Pro Vice Chancellor Global, I mean, the whole question of the international nature of higher education. Any thoughts on how that's going to present itself to you these next 6 months? We talked yesterday briefly, didn't we, about the impact on a university that attempts to do both teaching and serious research.
Yeah, well, it's a big question, and there's the next 6 months, and of the obvious focus about how many students turn up in September, October, and that has a massive implication for the financial challenges that all universities are facing. But then there's the medium term, long term about will students continue to travel in the same kinds of numbers? But of course, this also in my portfolio is sustainability. And so there was already a challenge that I was trying to address in my university and in the sector around what does low carbon transnational education look like? You know, is it really sustainable to be trying to attract hundreds and thousands, not hundreds of thousands, students to the university kind of each year, and also send flying faculty off to teach in other parts of the world? So what this has done, COVID, if we see this, if there's any positivity here, is it's accelerated a challenge, I think, that we were already facing. And it's upskilled us digitally and shown us the possibilities and also the challenges, but the possibilities of doing education and educational business in a different kind of way. So again, not to suggest that just being online and never going anywhere and never seeing each other in flesh and blood is desirable, but actually when we pivot back, I don't think it'll be in the same way, and I don't think it should be, because I don't think the way we were working before was environmentally sustainable, probably or financially sustainable, really, and that's one of the things that's really become apparent in the last weeks.
Thank you. What I'd like to do to end with, Nicola, if you could, because clearly the chat has had quite a lot about different bits of software, individual solutions. For my British Council colleagues, I think it would be useful if people could do the second poll, which is asking them what platforms they're using, which bits of software, not for discussion today because we're out of time, but to give colleagues a sense of what's being used and where some additional training or support might be helpful. So if our audience could please, and I think again, Nicola, this is, you can tick one, can't you? So might be difficult for some, but which is the platform that you use the most at your university? And Samar and his colleagues will put this in their pipe and smoke it and think through what the implications might be. As people are completing that, I'd like to say thank you very much indeed to our 4 panelists who've given us a very good broad range of views and experience on the current pandemic. I hope you agree this has got the series off to a good start. There will be one each week on a range of topics, and we promise you that we'll try and bring assessment further up the queue more quickly, because a lot of people want to engage with that. And we'll just wait to see the results of that poll. What have we got, Nicola? Have you got something of any? Zoom's doing pretty well. Moodle, Blackboard, Facebook Live. Yeah. So it's a range. There's no, Zoom is perhaps the most popular, but there's no obvious major platform here. Summer, is there anything else you'd like to say that I might have forgotten to say about the rest of the series, please?
Just to say that, I mean, towards the end, all panelists touched upon the future of universities, how will this change the function of the university? And we'll have a dedicated session next Wednesday at this same time to talk about the future of university. So I do encourage all of you who have attended today to come back and join the next discussion so we can explore that further.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for today. I've enjoyed it. I hope other people have found it useful and enjoyable. Thank you very much.